Today, I want to let you in on a secret of how non-attachment practices can superpower our intuition, connect us with our guides, build our confidence, our faith in ourselves, and the present moment. So in this video, I'm going to share with you why non-attachment is key, not only to manifesting, but to being guided by our intuition. How we can really differentiate our own personal ego will versus divine will, and practices to help soothe and calm what I call our human parts so that we can better have faith, better connect, and better trust. How non-attachment is key to superpowering your intuition and yourself. So this conversation and this even idea for this video came about after talking to one of my clients. She had been really focusing all of her energy and her attention on manifesting a relationship. And she'd been doing it for a really long time. We just started. She was like, I'm frustrated. I've done everything right. I asked for help. I'm doing all these things. Why is it not working? What's going on? And it brought up this really interesting conversation that I think is important to share with you about how we have to practice non-attachment in order to be guidable, in order for our intuition to actually guide us. Now, when I think of the word non-attachment, it can often be kind of a buzzword or like, what does that even mean? Am I just supposed to like park it at neutral and not have any different feelings? And I'm like, no, that's not it. So when we're talking about non-attachment, I often relate it to being flexible. How can we be flexible? Because intuition guides us from moment to moment to moment. It resides in the present moment. Your intuition is the voice of your spirit, and it speaks not in words, but in vibration, and it is centered in deep, deep, deep love. So it will always point you to your highest good. Now, your intuition works perfectly all the time. As my Nana would say, you cannot improve upon your spirit. You can only allow more of it, which in my world really means, are you creating space to be present and tune into your intuition? Or are you locked in what you think should be a fixed outcome, having those blinders on, missing all the signs and symbols, and also using our own like human conscious will to think that what we limitedly know is going to be in our highest good, which often it's not. I'm sure many of you have had experiences where you've really wanted something, whether it was a job, a relationship, something that you're like, I really want to make this work. And then when you look in the rearview mirror, you're like, oh my God, thank God I didn't get that. I know I have a few of these. So I'm going to just talk about how this interplay is so important, how we can cultivate some non-attachment flexibility practices so we can quiet and calm our human parts and better be guidable. Now, before I go any further, hi, I'm Sonia. I'm a fourth generation intuitive, and I teach you how to plug back into your innate divine self, your intuition. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Don't forget to subscribe with that little bell notification. Word salad. And also check out the links below, checking out my upcoming workshops, and also a bunch of free resources, quiz, past life readings, all of it. My podcast with my family. There's tons of free resources here to help you on your journey. So enough housekeeping. Let's talk about non-attachment and intuition. So first, our intuition really guides us on what's important. It's like where we focus our energy. It's kind of like our GPS coordinates. Just as, people are like, I want to be more intuitive. I'm like, great, that's a practice of listening. But most importantly, where do you want to be guided? So going back to my client of how she really wanted a relationship. She was like, I am fixed on how this will look. Now, desire, which is an engine. So when you really want something, whatever it might be, that naturally focuses our attention and energy so that we can be guidable. Think of it as like a GPS coordinate on Google Maps. I'll be saying, I want that. And your intuition will tell you, just like when you're driving with your GPS, turn by turn, how to get there. Now, that is when we're guidable. That's when we're flexible. Now, sometimes when we're in our human mind, which can get very attached to how things should unfold, how things look, what's going on, it's kind of like Google Maps is going, but we've turned up the radio so loud, which is usually the chatter of our mind, and have just gone our own way. And then we're like, what the heck? How have I not been getting guidance? It happens often, I see it very often with my clients. So first, when we get really fixed on what we want, often it's what I call our own personal will. And you can maybe even look in your life of where your own personal will has been the engine. And just in that same way, when it's our own personal will, where we really are like, this is what I want no matter what, oftentimes we put all of our time, energy, burnt out. We might even show up and have created what we want. But at the same time, we're like, this is not it. What I think I wanted wasn't what I really wanted. So when we're talking about our intuition, we're also recognizing that it said like it's leading us to our highest good. And so when we recognize that the outcome that we may have wished we wanted, like my client and her relationship, gets her so focused on how she thinks it's supposed to go, what the outline, that it ends up in a lot of frustration, which then tunes out our intuition, tunes out our spirit guides, tunes us out of all of the different ways that the universe is communicating to us. And oftentimes it's like rejection is protection, sometimes in that same vein. So here are some of my favorite non-attachment practices to help really, I feel like, first soothe our human parts that can get super overwhelmed and scared and frustrated. So the very first one is to first, be flexible. How flexible are you? So checking even just in your body, do you move? Do you move the energy? We get fixated and we get into our heads, and it becomes an energetic landfill. And how we can really notice is it becomes like our little rotisserie chicken on a spit. It goes around and around and around, and it often also has statements that are absolute. I never get what I want. So it never works out. I'm always blah, blah, blah. Now, the more that we identify with those beliefs, the more that we water them, the more that we believe them. It kind of becomes input. So sometimes even in just being flexible, we can have a pause. Sometimes I don't get what I want. Sometimes it's hard for me to have faith. Sometimes I'm anxious. When we can even just start to put in that little pause, what we do is even first just acknowledge our very general frustrations that come from being a human being. And also with that same pause of just even that word sometimes also opens us up to a realm of curiosity. It isn't always, it isn't never, it's sometimes, right? And when we can lean into that place of being curious, right? So like for my client, I was like, well, what's going on? Why? She's like, I never get that, but this always happens to me. I was like, all right, maybe let's just park it into sometimes and just see what happens. She was like, actually, if I say sometimes, I notice that I have a little bit more space. And I was like, all right, maybe you should go move and dance. We're like, all right, that actually helps to quiet all of that anxious, ungrounded energy. So be flexible, move. Second, practice the power of sometimes. 3, we have to have a clear energy field. And what that means is I feel like often that we can just empty ourselves. So in my world, when I can feel myself feeling stressed or anxious, maybe I'm not getting an outcome that I wish I wanted, or things aren't moving as fast, this is a good key to me that I need to tune into my human parts that want to know what the outcome will be, and that I can start to actually turn it over to my higher self. So a really simple way to even start to clear that energy field, to turn things over, is have a dedicated altar space, a practice. And one thing that I love to do is physically write notes out, right? What I want help on, what I'm struggling with, and fold it up into a tiny piece of paper and put it on my altar. And as a physical act of turning something over, When we can externalize it, it goes from the chatter of here to, okay, I'm actually using all of my senses to key in to ask for help and turn things over to my higher self. And that also helps, like I said, organize our crispy critters. Which brings me to, I think, number 4. I always get lost in numbers. Of just being kind. The more that we can be kind and compassionate, the more that we can pivot instead of looking at frustration as a problem, but an opportunity to deepen our self-love, to deepen our compassion, to deepen our patience, the more that we'll be connected to our heart space for ourselves. And our heart space is not only so powerful, but it's also a portal to your intuitive guidance. All of a sudden, new things will pop in. Instead of being in the chatter that can get so loud and really, really, really critical. And again, this is where we have to just practice it being open and available to possibilities. A prayer that my mom taught me as a kid was, Holy Mother, Father, lead me in my highest good. And having a practice of like, okay, what I think I want might actually be a protection instead of a way that the universe and my guides, my angels, my intuition is working against me. And when we can start to actually have those things of a bigger picture of like, oh, my limited human self is limited, and that I trust that my higher self is orchestrating, is moving me, and that I can, as principle 1, be movable. So these are some of my non-attachment practices. The more that we are unattached to our outcome, the more that we're open to all sorts of different possibilities, the ways we take our blinders off. And exactly like I said, what you think you want might not actually be it, and something way, way better is around the corner. I really quick think of a relationship that I had when I was young, and it was not cute. And I wanted more than anything for this to work out. I used my guides, my angels, my higher self, all these different things. I was like, I focused my energy. I went to therapy. I did all the things, still ended in shambles. And now I look back and I really recognize that my higher self was not only giving me messages all along the way, but thank goodness for both of us that didn't work out. So with my client, I will keep you updated, but I know that the more that she turns things over, that things will shift, and they'll have a new energy of approaching not only manifestation, but her own intuition. So if you enjoyed this video, give me a like, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you next week. Bye.